Welcome to Brodein Cinemas. Make sure you grab your popcorn and beware of spoilers ahead because today we discuss an Australian science fiction film called 2067. The movie is set in the year 2067, where the world is destroyed due to climate change, and plant life has went extinct, meaning no more oxygen. People actually have to buy artificial oxygen just to survive. 99% of the world has went dark, and people are suffocating to death. Only one city in Australia has survived because of a company called Chronocorp Corporation, which manufactures synthetic oxygen. Now don't think for 1 second that that's good for you, because artificial oxygen actually causes a fatal disease called the sickness over time. The human race doesn't have too many years left before it goes completely extinct. Ethan White is a resident in the city, and him and his friend Jude work as mechanics in the Chronocorp Corporation. The corporation is working day in and day out to find a cure for the sickness and a way to save the world. Ethan's wife Xanthi also has the sickness. Now listen y'all, Ethan be putting in hella hours at work just so she can have better oxygen, and I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like some true love to me. Ethan's wife Xanthi, she better be thankful. The Chronocorp CTO of Particle Research, Regina Jackson, has both Ethan and Jude pull up to her office to introduce herself and tell them that humanity only has a few years left if the conditions don't change. She then tells Ethan that he's the only one that can help everyone and save humanity. Ethan is confused and doesn't believe her, but Regina like, I'm not capping Ethan, you is the one. So what does Regina do? She takes him to the lab so she can show him that he is indeed Captain Save-A-Ho. Next, the lab doctor Billy Mitchell introduces himself and looks at Ethan's wrist device just for a second, making me think Ethan is on house arrest or something, but trust me, it's much more deeper than that. So they then tell Ethan that his father, Dr. Richard White, started this project 20 years ago. The machine that's in front of them is a time machine called the Chronicle. In the first ever experiment, they had to send radio waves to check what was on the other side. They found out that 407 years later, in 2474, the Earth would have enough vegetation to maintain enough oxygen in the air and sustain human life. They assume that if it's life in 2474, then the people in the future have found a way to fix all the problems that humanity is currently facing in 2067. The scientists found something that baffled them though. The waves they sent through the time machine came back encrypted, but once they decoded it, they quickly realized that someone from the future sent them a message that said, "Send Ethan White."
So now you got Regina and the whole lab ready to send Ethan through the time machine because they really believe he's Captain Save-A-Ho. But Ethan has a hard time wrapping his head around this and still thinks they're lying. But you know, with Ethan being the lover boy that he is, he doesn't want to leave his sick wife and go into the future, so he declines to help them. Later on, Jude and Ethan go to a diner where they buy crisp oxygen, and Jude tries to persuade Ethan that he should go through with the plan and help save humanity. But Ethan's not going for it because he tells Jude that he doesn't want to end up being like his father, in which he hates him for never being there for him, and he doesn't want to end up treating his wife the same way his father treated him. Now 20 years ago, his father left home and went missing while his mother was killed, all while he was just a kid. And from that moment on, he was raised by Jude, who he now looks at like his big brother / best friend. Ethan blames his father for the death of his mother because he left to complete the project and doesn't want to follow in his path and leave his sick wife. But Jude finally manages to persuade Ethan by telling him that the only way he can save his wife is by finding a cure. So he needs to put his foot down and leave them daddy issues at home because humanity don't got no time for that. Next, Ethan reminisces about his 8th birthday when his father brought him a strange box as a gift, and as he reaches his hand into the box, a device latches onto his wrist that makes him bleed immediately. His father Richard had placed a permanent hand device on his son, and Ethan never knew the true use of the device through all the years he had it on. Later on that night, Ethan explains to Xanthi everything that happened that day, and she insists that he goes through the machine to bring back a cure. The following morning, Ethan writes, "I will find my way back to you on a metal flower and leaves it beside Santa. He then goes back to Regina's office to tell her that if he's gonna go through with this, then his only condition is that they give the first dose of the cure to his wife. Regina accepts and takes him back to the lab where Dr. Mitchell shows him the suit he has to put on before entering the machine. As they begin to tell him his mission, Ethan quickly realizes that they don't have a plan. They have no clue what he will see or who he will meet on the other end, but after they put him in the suit, they give him an AI device called the Archie, which will help show the lab Ethan's vitals at all times and will also help him navigate to his location. Then, they finally activate the machine where Ethan is inside, moving at a high speed through time.
He falls from the sky and lands in an unknown jungle. The friction from the air causes his suit to catch fire, so he quickly gets out of it. Then he looks around and is shocked by the beauty of nature. He discovers that the world has completely changed. The trees and natural oxygen are back, so he walks in the direction Archie directs him and sees a bunker door of some sort. But what really catches his eyes is a skeleton that lies right in front of the door, and his skull has a bullet hole in it. So he looks at the name tag on it and is horrified to see his own name. The skeleton lying there is Ethan's. He also finds the skeleton's Archie and plays the last recording on it. He hears a man say that this is the only way and shoots Ethan. All of a sudden, the device's power goes off and he is horrified, believing that this is the fate that awaits him. He notices the skeleton's wrist device is identical to Ethan's, except the light glows green in the skeleton's device, but Ethan's has been red his whole life. So that night, he lights a fire and eats wild berries, but it turns out that the berries were poisonous, so this makes Ethan vomit and he starts to go unconscious and wakes up after a while and is surprised to see Jude in front of him. But as it turns out, the lab saw Ethan's vitals dropping and assumed he was having a reaction to the poison, so they quickly sent Jude to the future with the cure to save him. Sometime later, Ethan and Jude find that his skeleton still remains there, which means his fate hasn't changed, so they then use Archie to find another door. Some device scans Ethan's eye and grants them access. When they go in, a monitor welcomes them and asks him for a DNA sample. When he accepts it, his wrist device begins to work, making him bleed. After the blood test, it goes green. The lights in the room turn on and they realize that they are in Chronocorp's lab 407 years later. The time machine is in front of them too. Jude gets excited because now they have the means to go back to the past, but Ethan doesn't think so, saying they haven't changed anything and he will still end up dead, just like the dead skeleton of himself sitting outside. Ethan checks the system login and finds a holographic recording made by his father, who explains that the time machine was originally designed to collect the oxygen data in the future planet and then transmit it back to the past. However, when his father first started the time machine, he received a message asking him to send his son to the future, but despite his misgivings, he chose to do so and made a DNA verification here for Ethan. Soon, Ethan and Jude realize that the time machine won't be able to take them back because its battery has almost depleted after 407 years. What's worse is that the activation of the lab triggers a malfunction in its nuclear power core, which is threatening to unleash a nuclear explosion in just 4 hours. This means they have to find a way to fix the time machine and travel back before the explosion. Due to the fact that they're running out of time, they have to act quickly. Outside, they are surprised to find a ruined city covered with green plants but inhabited with no humans, showing that Earth only starts to recover itself after human extinction. Human skeletons are scattered everywhere. Ethan gets to his wife's house only to find her bones, making him fall into despair. Jude tries to persuade him to go back to the past, as the cure against the sickness doesn't seem to exist even in the future world. However, Jude's words starts to make Ethan suspicious. He then turns on the rusty Archie to play the recording once again, from which he recognizes Jude's voice, and it seems that Jude is exactly the one who shot him. Jude raises his gun at Ethan, strongly denying that he would ever shoot Ethan, and I don't know about y'all, but if I was in that situation, I would be like, I I definitely think this means you the one who shot me, cause why would me telling you that make you point your gun at me, huh? But anyway, Ethan finally decides to complete his mission first, so with joint efforts, they manage to repair the power core and return to the lab.
Now the Chronicle system works and they should be able to return to the past. They just need to wait 37 minutes till portal launch. Once the countdown reaches 0, the portal will tether to 2067 for approximately 30 seconds. However, Ethan still finds that his body remains behind a door at the same location, which implies that they haven't made any changes to the future. In order to figure out the truth, Ethan pulls out the battery of his current Archie and puts it on the rusty one. And that way he gets access to another video in which Ethan is sure that his future self will be killed by Jude. Jude then confesses that there is no hope of changing the future and he is trying to protect Ethan. Finding it hard to believe, Ethan locks his brother up in a room, then plays his father's holographic log back from the day that he died. He soon discovers a conversation between the Chronocorp CTO Regina Jackson and his father. It has shown that Ethan's father wanted to use the time machine to save all of mankind by finding the cure, but the CTO had only intended to use the time machine to flee the year 2067 with a few chosen people. However, whichever plan they choose, someone must travel into the future and turn on the time machine to safely send people through time, as it requires an operational link from both sides. In order to stop the CTO's plan, his father locked the time machine and sets Ethan's DNA as a verification key. But Miss Regina didn't like that at all. No, not one bit. So the CTO, Big Regina Jackson, killed him immediately and then orders Jude to kill Ethan's mother and be his guardian so that one day they can use Ethan's wristband to get access to the future. So basically, Ethan's whole entire life was a setup. Ethan is beyond surprised that the man that he once thought of to be his brother actually turned out to be the one who killed his mother and is about to kill him too. He also realizes that he misunderstood his father, who didn't deliberately abandon their family. Now, knowing that Regina wants to bring a chosen few into the future, Ethan tries to shut the time machine down, but Jude rushes to stop Ethan and reveals that he is tasked by the CTO to ensure that Ethan is sent in time to repair the power failure. Once Ethan activates the time machine, he is supposed to kill Ethan. However, Jude has formed close emotional relations with Ethan over the years, and seeing his brother-like friend in that state because of him, he becomes guilt-ridden. So instead of shooting Ethan, he shoots himself dead in rage and regret. Ethan is determined to fulfill his father's dying wishes, which is to find the cure and save the dying humanity.
He looks into the monitor and finds the very first message written by his father and determines that the message Ethan White was sent by himself. So he codes the message again and sends that very same message back to the past, along with many other things. Meanwhile, in the laboratory of the year 2067, the CTO with a group of privileged chosen people are waiting anxiously for the time machine to be activated. But little did they know they were in for a rude awakening, because the time machine sends back hundreds of extinct plants along with a copy of the recorded murder of Ethan's father. Soon after, the time machine is destroyed by Ethan, resulting in the collapse of the CTO's plan. In the end, the CTO was arrested due to the murder, and the plants sent back to 2067 are cultivated to revitalize the planet. Ethan's wife Xanthi also receives a flower sent from him and understands his choice. While Ethan has to stay in the future world alone, he buries Jude and forgives him. After that, a butterfly catches his attention and leads him again to the same entrance, where Ethan is happy to notice that the corpse of his future self is gone. He rushes to take a look at the world outside and feels relieved to see a futuristic, eco-friendly city in contrast to the deserted one from earlier. So that very decision had changed the future of mankind. But hey man, that's the end of the video. Let us know what other movies you want us to recap, and without further ado, we appreciate you stopping by Brody Cinemas.